The recording was only 43 seconds long, but it destroyed everything. Old fool believes anything if you put therapy in front of it. My daughter's voice chirped through the phone speaker. I told him he has toxic generational trauma and needs to make amends through material reconciliation. He's signing over the lake house tomorrow. Her friend's laughter echoed in response. Jessica, you're evil. Your own grandfather? He's loaded and going to die anyway. Better I get it than some charity. I played it again, my hands trembling. Behind me, my father, the man my daughter had convinced was a toxic patriarch, sat in his wheelchair, tears rolling down his weathered cheeks. I thought I was protecting you all, he whispered. She said my love was controlling, that giving her the properties would heal our family trauma. That was 3 months ago. Today, Jessica sits in a courtroom, her therapy license revoked, her reputation destroyed, and fraud charges pending in 3 states. But I need to tell you how we got here. How my own daughter, my pride and joy, became a predator who used her psychology degree as a weapon against the man who paid for that very education. My name is Robert Walsh. I'm a high school principal, married for 32 years to Maria, a cardiac nurse. We raised 2 children, Jessica, now 29, and Thomas, 25. Jessica was always the star, valedictorian, full scholarship to college, accepted into a prestigious psychology doctorate program. We were so proud. My father, Eugene Walsh, built his fortune the hard way. Starting as a carpenter's apprentice at 16, he eventually owned a construction company that built half the commercial properties in our city. By the time he retired, he had accumulated significant wealth, several rental properties, a beautiful lake house, and a portfolio that would ensure comfort for generations. But Dad was never flashy about money. He lived in the same modest house for 40 years, drove a 10-year-old truck, and found joy in simple pleasures, fishing, woodworking, and Sunday dinners with family. He was generous but practical, paying for his grandchildren's education and helping when needed, but always emphasizing hard work and integrity. Jessica graduated with her psychology doctorate 2 years ago. She struggled to build a private practice. The market was saturated, and she lacked experience. She moved back home temporarily, frustrated and increasingly bitter about her student loans and lack of immediate success. That's when the changes started. Grandpa's showing signs of toxic masculinity, she announced one Sunday dinner. The way he interrupts Grandma, his need to control conversations, classic patriarchal behavior patterns. My mother had passed 5 years earlier, so Dad was alone. He looked confused. I interrupt people? It's unconscious, Jessica explained, using what I now recognize as her therapy voice. Soft, concerned, authoritative. Your generation was conditioned to assert dominance. It's not your fault, but it causes intergenerational trauma. At first, it seemed harmless. Jessica would have private therapy sessions with Dad, helping him work through his issues. He was lonely since Mom died, and he enjoyed the attention from his granddaughter. He'd come to Sunday dinner talking about emotional labor and toxic patterns he was discovering about himself. Maria and I exchanged concerned looks but said nothing. If it helped Dad process his grief and gave Jessica practice, what was the harm? The harm revealed itself slowly. I've been so selfish, Dad announced one evening. Jessica helped me realize I've been hoarding wealth that could help others heal. She says material possessions are how my generation avoided emotional connection. He started giving things away. First, small items, his tools to neighbors, his book collection to the library. We thought he was downsizing, which made sense at his age. But then came bigger announcements. I'm signing the lake house over to Jessica, he said casually over coffee. She needs a healing space for her practice, and I need to release my material attachments. Dad, I protested. That house has been in our family for 30 years. You built it yourself. His face crumbled. Jessica says you'd react this way, that you've inherited my toxic need for control. I'm trying to break the cycle, Robert. Don't you want our family to heal? I confronted Jessica that night. She was in her room, my old office, surrounded by psychology textbooks and crystals she'd started collecting. The lake house, Jessica? Really? She didn't even look up from her laptop. Grandpa's making autonomous choices about his property. As his therapist, I can't discuss our sessions, but I can say he's making tremendous progress in releasing patriarchal wealth-hoarding behaviors. You're not his therapist. I exploded. You're his granddaughter. This is unethical. She finally looked at me, her eyes cold. I have a doctorate in psychology. I'm more qualified to assess Grandpa's mental health than you are. Maybe you should examine why you're so triggered by his growth. The gaslighting was masterful. Every concern became proof of our toxicity. Every question about her methods showed our resistance to healing. She isolated Dad from us, scheduling their sessions during family events, telling him we were not ready for his transformation. Within 6 months, she had convinced him to sign over the lake house, transfer 2 rental properties to her name, give her power of attorney for his emotional protection, rewrite his will, leaving her everything because Thomas and I were too trapped in toxic patterns to handle wealth responsibly. The breaking point came when my brother Daniel called from Arizona. "Bobby, something's wrong with Dad." He called crying, saying he's been a terrible father, that he needs to sell the family business and donate the money to some therapy foundation Jessica's starting. This isn't him. That weekend, Daniel flew in. We attempted an intervention, but Jessica had prepared Dad for this. "I knew you'd gang up on me," Dad said sadly. "Jessica warned me about family systems resisting change. I'm finally healing at 81, and you can't handle it." But Daniel noticed something I'd missed. Jessica was recording our conversation on her phone. That night, Daniel did something I'll forever be grateful for. He snuck into Jessica's room while she was out and cloned her phone to his laptop. What we found made us sick. Hundreds of recordings. Not just of Dad, but of other elderly people from her practice. She had detailed notes on manipulation tactics. Eugene Walsh keywords: toxic healing, making amends. Triggers: deceased wife, fear of being a bad father. Successful phrases: your generation didn't know better. Material reconciliation, healing the family line. But the worst was the recordings of her conversations with friends. Laughing about stupid old people. Bragging about her therapeutic finesse. Planning which property to sell first. And then we found it, the 43-second recording that changed everything. The one where she called her grandfather an old fool, who believes anything with therapy words. We didn't confront her immediately. Instead, we contacted a lawyer who specialized in elder abuse and financial fraud. He advised us to gather more evidence and file a report with Adult Protective Services. The investigation moved quickly. The state licensing board was very interested in a therapist who was treating family members and accepting property as payment. The Bar Association was fascinated by her fraudulent use of power of attorney. The district attorney saw a clear case of elder abuse and financial exploitation. But we needed Dad to understand. Telling him broke my heart. We sat in his living room, the house he'd built with his own hands, that Jessica had tried to convince him was a monument to toxic masculinity. I played the recording. The change in his face was devastating. From confusion to recognition to absolute devastation. She said I was broken, he whispered. That I'd damaged all of you. That giving her the properties was the only way to make amends before I died. "Dad, you're not broken," I said, holding his hand. "You're the best father anyone could ask for. She used your love against you." The legal consequences were swift and severe. Jessica was arrested for fraud, elder abuse, and practicing therapy on family members without proper boundaries. The properties were returned to Dad. Her therapy license was revoked in our state, and when the story hit the news, 2 neighboring states followed suit. The recordings revealed she'd done this to 6 other elderly clients, convincing them they were toxic and needed to make amends through property transfers. The total fraud exceeded $2 million. At her sentencing, Jessica tried one last manipulation. She wore conservative clothes, cried on cue, and claimed she was trying to heal generational trauma and had gotten confused about boundaries. The judge wasn't buying it. You weaponize psychology against vulnerable people, including your own grandfather. You turn therapy terminology into a tool for theft. This represents a profound betrayal of professional ethics and family trust. She got 5 years in prison, 3 years probation, and was ordered to pay full restitution. Her psychology license was permanently revoked nationwide. No state will ever let her practice again. Dad lived 2 more years after the trial. We made sure they were good years, full of fishing trips, family dinners, and the love Jessica had tried to convince him was toxic. He never fully recovered from the betrayal, though. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at her old photos, trying to understand how his granddaughter became a stranger. Before he died, he said something that stays with me. "I paid for her education because I wanted her to help people. I never imagined she'd use it to hurt the ones who loved her most." The lake house sits empty now. We can't bring ourselves to use it, knowing what almost happened there. Thomas wants to sell it, but Maria thinks we should reclaim it, Fill it with good memories to override the bad ones. Sometimes I get letters from Jessica in prison. Long, rambling things about healing and forgiveness and understanding her journey. I don't read them anymore. Thomas does, just to make sure she's not planning something new. The irony isn't lost on me. Jessica studied psychology to understand the human mind, but she never understood the human heart. She learned all the right words: trauma, healing, toxicity, boundaries, but missed their meaning. She could diagnose fictional problems, but couldn't see the real damage she was causing. Other families have reached out since the story went public. Elderly parents convinced they were toxic by children with psychology degrees. Grandparents who signed over property to heal family trauma. The manipulation is always the same. Use therapeutic language to create shame, then offer financial solutions. We started a support group. Dad would have liked that, taking something painful and building something helpful. We teach families the warning signs, the difference between real therapy and manipulation, how to protect elderly loved ones from those who would weaponize wellness. Jessica will be released in 3 years with good behavior. She'll be 35, unable to practice psychology, with a felony record and millions in restitution to pay. Sometimes I wonder if she understands yet what she threw away. Not just her career, but a family who loved her, a grandfather who would have given her anything if she'd just asked honestly. But then I remember that recording. Old fool believes anything with therapy words. No, she knew exactly what she was doing. And that's the hardest truth to heal from. That someone you raised, loved, and sacrificed for could look at your father and see nothing but a mark. The real therapy, it turns out, is learning to live with that truth. No toxic patriarchy to blame. No generational trauma to heal. Just a simple, painful fact. Sometimes the people we love most become strangers, and there's no therapeutic word that makes that okay. Dad's workshop still smells like sawdust and mineral oil. His tools hang on the pegboard he installed 40 years ago. Sometimes I go there to think, to remember the man Jessica tried to convince was broken. He wasn't broken. He was human, flawed, and loving and generous to his last breath. That's the legacy she tried to steal, and the one we fought to protect. And in the end, that's the only therapy that matters, protecting the people we love from those who would use their love against them. Even when those people are family. Especially then.